So do you mind if we talk about – you probably know these players. So Joey Votto.
Yeah, where Joey and I hang out all the time.
I figured you did.
Yeah. Lives in my neighborhood.
I figured you guys, hey, I need a drink. It's been a tough day.
Yeah, swing by Joey's.
Hey, your owner, your president of your team just really made a mistake. I'm having a tough day.
Yeah.
Can we drink? So, has Joey Votto been the leader that a small market team or medium market team that invests $250 million, is he the guy that our team needed? Did he play the role?
Sure.
All the way around.
I don't know the leadership thing. I don't know that any of us are really equipped to comment on that.
Yep.
Honestly, I think that part is.
So the question is, are you closer to it? Do you see it more? Do you hear it?
I've not heard that he's a bad teammate. I've not heard that he's a guy that alienates his team. Everybody leads differently. I mean,
agree.
what I would say is nobody takes their craft more seriously than Joey Votto, and so.
Of a baseball player.
In the business that I work in, I identify leaders by watching people who are really good at sort of taking their craft seriously. And sports are obviously a different dynamic, but they waste when Joey signed his contract, nobody wanted to talk about what the years at the end were going to be like. Nobody wanted to. I tried. And my take at the time was, this could be like using a credit card. And I don't own a credit card.
That interest is going to come due.
But, boy, you might use that credit card to pay your vacation. You better enjoy it because the bill's going to come due, and it's going to be a hell of a lot less fun. So you got to win in the short term. Joey Votto in 2015, 16, and 17 was an MVP caliber player. Came in second in 2017. The Reds lost 98, 94 games those years. Just wasted it. Wasted his prime. And, 2012 they were good, but 2012 Joey was already under contract. The contract didn't kick in, I think, until 2014. So the early years of that deal, the Reds didn't take advantage. That's not Joey's fault.
Mm-hmm. So I run a sales company.
Yeah.
Right? I don't ever promote it really on here too much. We wear the brand. But so I run a sales company.
Mm-hmm.
What I've learned in the past 20 to 25 years in corporate America and the companies that I started and that I run, there's always some people that rise to the top in the sales organizations. Mm-hmm. The 80-20 rule is fascinating because it seems like it exists everywhere.
Yeah.
But what I've found, just because those salespeople are great at sales doesn't mean they have the leadership skills to be a manager.
Yeah.
And normally they don't coexist.
Sure. The leadership thing with Joey, who was he supposed to lead?
I don't know.
So those years when the Reds really stunk.
Yeah.
Who was Joey? Was he supposed to lead these
play every position
collection of pitchers that weren't big league caliber? I mean, they were bringing up dudes that you knew were never going to survive in the big. That's not Joey's fault. And Joey did an interview with my colleague Lance McAllister, and Lance asked him, this is maybe a year after he signed the contract, and the contract hadn't even kicked in yet, but he said something to the effect of, you make a lot of money for a smaller market team, and I'm not. I'll paraphrase what Lance asked, but it was basically like, what do you say to somebody who says you make too much money given this team's relative lack of resources? And Joey said, we're going to have to be good with cheaper players. Our cheaper players are going to have to be good. That's a reality. That comes back to the organization that has to be good at cranking out good big league ball players. They haven't been. That's not Joey's fault.
So question in St. Louis.
No, what I'll say about this is the drop-off for Joey, I think, was a little bit steeper than people were ready for because he should have won the MVP in 17. He was good, but not by Joey's standards in 18. Last season in 2021, he was resurgent. And so now you go, okay, well, number one, should they have invested that kind of money into a guy who the skill set I thought was going to age well, but hasn't? Did it make sense to know you were going to have to be paying a guy $25 million when he's 38, 39, 40 years old? Number two, shouldn't they have done more to try to win while he was in his prime? Neither of those things are Joey's fault. Is he a rah-rah type of guy? By his own admission, he's not. But I would say there's nobody who has approached their job with more studiousness or seriousness on that team for a very long time than Joey Votto.
So would a guy like him fit better as a number 2 or a number 3 on a Yankees, on a Red Sox, on a Dodgers, where he doesn't need to play that role? So the question is, does a baseball team need to have it? So go back to the Cardinals real quick.
Yeah.
I'm not the crazy – I'm not I don't have as much fandom as I used to.
Yeah.
Growing up, being younger, I was that guy. My blood pressure and the feeling of my heart rode on wins and losses.
Mm-hmm.
I just try to enjoy the games now.
Yeah.
However, what's been the mainstay of the St. Louis Cardinals? Hated the player for the Cardinals who just retired for the past decade and a half.
Yeah.
Who's it been?
Yadier Molina.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't understand the stats, the lines, his performance. I just know that me being a fan, not very often do I sit in diamond seats behind the plate.
Mm-hmm.
But I did when they played the Cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
And that guy seems like a guy that you want to go into battle with.
Sure.
To me as a fan, Joey doesn't give off that same vibe. And being a small market team, doesn't there have to be someone on that team that you want to go to battle with?
Sure. But, I mean,
so these are questions as a fan.
I would say you don't want a guy who at his prime got on base 42% of the time and was one of the most difficult batters to retire in the sport.
100% you do.
Of course you do.
Yep, the talent.
So is it Joey's fault that he just doesn't have that personality? No.
Is it the team's job to understand that if that's a needed?
It's the organization's job to get better players.
Yeah. Remember when Scott Rowland came?
And to this day, people talk about his impact. But
I felt it as a fan. I don't know.
So here's the thing, all right? So they trade for Scott Rowland, and then they added years to his contract because I think he was only going to be here for the rest of 9, 10, and 11, and they added another year in 2012, right? Mm-hmm. They trade Edwin Encarnacion. They knew Scott Rowland was on the downside of his career. Now, he had some pretty competent years here. He was an All-Star in 2010. Played a Gold Glove caliber third base. In 2012, when Joey got hurt, Scott played third base while Todd Frazier played first, and Scott Rowland was unbelievable. But they acquired him because they had this team of young guys. He was going to bring intangibles. He was going to teach these guys how to win. And then for years, what have I heard? They never should have traded Encarnacion. So what do you want? You want the leadership or you want the production? Now, here's what I would say. Give me that dude who hit more home runs in the 2010s than any player ahead of a guy who's going to pat people on the ass. I want the production. So what do we want? Do you want – because few players bring both, right? Mm-hmm. There's only a handful of Derek Jeters. Few players are going to do both. That's just kind of how it works, right? So do you want the production or do you want the rah-rah guy? Sometimes you got to make a decision. The Reds did. Now, Encarnacion here was flinging the ball into the right field stands, and the Blue Jays got rid of him, went to Oakland, then they brought him back, and he was unbelievable. But that guy hit, I think, more home runs than anybody in the 2010s. Would you have rather had that than the rah-rah guy? Give me the dude who's going to play. I don't need a cheerleader. So what do you want? So with Joey, again, I mean, you got high-level production, insanely, some of the best offensive seasons in this franchise's history. They just didn't put a good team around him. He's playing first base while Kevin Gregg and Asher Wojciechowski are pitching, and he's looking around the diamond, and there's just not major league caliber players. None of that is on Joe. You're going to lead those guys? Mm-hmm. You're going to lead those guys? So I think that leadership part of it is, in his particular case, dramatically overrated. The criticism of him as a leader is, I think, a little exaggerated.
So I think because I try to be reasonable, and being a fan, usually reason is left on the sideline. So, but I try to be, and being a business owner, I try to bring the same reason to it. And I didn't come up with these feelings about Joey, and it's this problem solving. Like, man, what do the Reds have to do to win? It's the same thing. It's like, what aren't we doing? What should they do? Well, the shit you've done hasn't worked. Mm-hmm. So something about the dynamics, whether it's the long contract, the $25 million, Dusty, in the third game of the game against the Giants, maybe leaving the pitcher in a little bit too long.
He didn't bring in Aroldis Chapman.
There you go.
I mean, he didn't bring in Aroldis Chapman, which is absurd.
Yeah, you have that tool, and you don't use it. So everything they've done, and I mean everything, hasn't given us, the fans, what we want.
Yeah, they haven't won.
That's it. We want to win.
At the end of the day, you are your track record.
Yeah.
And now, what folks don't want to hear, and I don't even really want to say, but I think the Reds have acknowledged what we've done isn't working, and so now we're going to try this. Unfortunately, trying this means you're going to have to wait longer, and I mean, they haven't advanced in the postseason since I was a freshman in college, so there's a lot of folks who are like, dude, I'm tired of waiting.
Yeah.
But I think there has been an acknowledgement what we have done, the different things we have done to this point haven't worked. We now have to be great at producing talent in our farm system. And that, I mean, honestly,
that's where the conversation started, right?
Whether it was the latter years of Marge Schott's tenure, or while Carl Lindner owned the team, or the last 16 years with the Castellini family, they haven't been consistently good at that. And when they were, what were the results?
Really good.
When Johnny Cueto and Homer Bailey and Joey Votto and
Jay Bruce
and Drew Stubbs and eventually Todd Frazier and Devin Mesoraco and Zach Kozart and a handful of others, that combined with, the Bronson Arroyo trade was smart and the Brandon Phillips trade was smart. But, nobody knew who Brandon Phillips was. And Bronson Arroyo was like the fifth starter on the Red Sox. Some good outside acquisitions, but for this stretch of time, they got really good at producing big league players. But that's been the exception and not the rule for the last 30 years.